In a quiet forest grove in ancient India, beneath the swaying trees and amidst the whispers of the wind, a solitary figure sat unmoved. His breathing was soft, his body still as stone. Yet, within his mind, a universe opened, vast, silent, luminous. This was not sleep, nor was it mere concentration. He was entering the first jhana, a state of consciousness so profound that even the ordinary sense of I am begins to dissolve. This man was Siddhartha Gautama, not yet called the Buddha. Long before the term meditation became fashionable in the modern world, the Pali canon recorded a map of the mind that was both subtle and radical. He taught that they were not ends in themselves, but powerful tools that could assist in seeing through the illusions of self, permanence, and suffering. But what are these jhanas, really? To the untrained eye, meditation seems like simply sitting quietly and watching the breath. But the Buddha's teaching reveals an astonishing journey, where the mind can enter altered states so refined that the body disappears from awareness, time seems to stop, and even thought itself can be abandoned. These states are not imagined or symbolic. They are actual, reproducible inner experiences accessible to human beings, though only with intense training and ethical discipline. Yet, the mystery of jhana is not just about extraordinary states. It lies in what they reveal and what they remove. At each level, something is let go: gross desire, restlessness, the need to think, even the sense of pleasure. The jhanas are not about gaining more, but about gradually undoing the illusions that bind the mind to the world. They are like climbing a mountain of consciousness, each level more quiet and luminous than the one before, until finally, the summit vanishes, and with it, the illusion of a separate self. This story will take you through the ancient path of jhana as taught in the Pali texts, not as a technique for relaxation, but as a spiritual technology that bends the limits of perception. We will explore the 8 stages in depth, trace how the Buddha discovered and used them, and uncover the secrets of how these experiences still hold the power to awaken even today. Long before Siddhartha Gautama sat beneath the Bodhi tree, the Indian subcontinent was already a land steeped in spiritual inquiry. For centuries, sages and wanderers had walked away from society, from ritual fires and sacred chants, to seek something beyond the visible world. The great forests were alive with hermitages and meditation huts. There, men and women sat for years in silence, testing the limits of human consciousness. It was within this ancient spiritual ferment that the seeds of jhana had already taken root. The term jhana, from the root jayati, meaning to meditate or to burn with focused attention, did not originate with the Buddha. It was part of the broader meditative landscape of pre-Buddhist India. Some sought it through severe austerities, others through metaphysical speculation. But a small subset turned inward, experimenting with mind and attention, discovering states of absorption so deep that all sense of the body, world, and even time itself faded away. Among these early seekers were 2 of the most renowned teachers of the age, reaching the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, a state hovering on the very edge of consciousness. These attainments were profound, almost unthinkable to the ordinary mind. In these formless absorptions, there was no sense of the world, no thoughts, no sensations, only the barest flicker of awareness. Teachers who could guide others into these states were revered. When Siddhartha demonstrated his mastery of these realms, both teachers offered to share their lineage and make him their equal. But something in him remained unsettled. Despite these sublime experiences, Siddhartha sensed that something was incomplete. These states, though blissful and vast, were still conditioned. They depended on effort, on causes. They ended. When he emerged from them, the ordinary mind returned, and with it came the old questions. Who am I? Why is there suffering? Is there an end that does not fade? It was this realization that led him to abandon both teachers, not out of disrespect, but out of a relentless search for something deeper than even the highest jhanas of his time. He turned next to asceticism, torturing the body to try to conquer the mind. He starved himself, held his breath for impossibly long intervals, endured extreme heat and cold. Yet still, liberation did not come. His body wasted, but the roots of delusion remained. Then came the turning point, the memory of a simple experience in his youth. As a child, he had sat under a rose apple tree, watching his father plow the fields. His mind, calm and untroubled, had slipped naturally into a state of deep peace and clarity. There had been no striving, no austerity, no formless metaphysics. It had simply been pure, collected awareness, the first jhana. This memory struck him with unexpected force. Siddhartha abandoned the extremes and began to nourish his body again. His companions, shocked, accused him of weakness and left. But he no longer wavered. Alone, he sat beneath the Bodhi tree and turned inward, not to escape the world, but to see through it. In the stillness of that night, he moved through the jhanas, the same absorptions he had learned before, but now approached with a new vision. He saw them not as ends, but as tools. From the first jhana to the fourth, he refined his awareness, sharpening it like a blade. Then, ascending into the formless realms, he moved through space, consciousness, nothingness, and beyond. And finally, using that clarity, he turned it inward, not to attain, but to let go. Not to find his self, but to see that no permanent self had ever existed. Thus, the Buddha redefined the very purpose of jhana. Before him, they were seen as lofty attainments, spiritual palaces in which the meditator could dwell. After him, they became a staircase to wisdom. He did not deny their power, in fact. He taught them with great detail, but he pointed to something higher still, liberation, not through absorption alone, but through insight born from it. The jhanas, then, are not just ancient meditative states. They are part of a living revolution in how consciousness can be used not just to explore, but to transcend itself. They are the ancient inheritance of all who dare to turn inward with courage and clarity. And as we now explore the 8 stages one by one, we must remember, these are not fantasies or theories. They are maps left behind by one who walked the entire path and woke up. It begins like a whisper, the mind accustomed to wandering like a wild animal. For perhaps the first time in one's life, the mind unites with its object. It stops scattering into past and future, into fear and fantasy, and turns inward with deliberate, sustained focus. This union is called vitakka, initial and sustained application. Like placing a needle gently on a record and keeping it steady. The meditator keeps the attention gently but firmly on a chosen object, most commonly the breath. At first, the mind resists. It wants to run. It wants to think, to plan, to remember. But if one remains patient and ethically grounded, if one persists without force but with firm determination, something begins to change. The inner chatter softens. The attention deepens. A sense of joy and rapture begins to arise, not the joy of the senses, but a joy born from seclusion. This joy, called piti, floods the body like cool water poured over dry earth. With the joy comes sukha, a deep ease, a well-being that fills the whole being. This is not happiness in the worldly sense, not a reaction to an event or a thought. It is the natural result of a mind that has stopped fighting itself. When the fires of desire, aversion, and restlessness are temporarily stilled, what remains is peace, a peace so complete it becomes palpable. Yet the first jhana is not without effort. The mind is still using vitakka and vikara, steering itself like a bird adjusting its wings in flight. It is stable, but not yet unshakable. Distractions may still arise at the edges. There is still a subtle sense of, I am meditating, a doer in the process. But even this is quieted under the current of joy and unity. In the Pali canon, the Buddha described the first jhana as follows. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures. Secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by initial and sustained application, born of seclusion, and filled with rapture and pleasure. Every word here is precise. Seclusion means withdrawal not only from the outer world but from the cravings of the inner one. Initial and sustained application speak to the process of placing the mind and keeping it there, not with strain, but with gentle perseverance. And the rapture and pleasure are the fruit, not the aim. Yet herein lies a secret. The joy of the first jhana is both the reward and the trap. For many meditators, this joy is the most beautiful experience they have ever known. It is clean, deep, and free from the usual corruption of desire. But the Buddha warned, even this must be let go. If one clings to the joy, identifies with it, or tries to recreate it through force, not the end of it. Having tasted the silence, the meditator now seeks to go deeper, to quiet even the movement of vitakka and vikara, to let go of the effort of directing the mind. The joy, once so fresh, must become tranquil. The rapture, once so delightful, must become calm. In this way, the first jhana teaches its own lesson. Deep peace is possible. but it requires letting go again and again, even of joy, even of ease, even of the sense of doing. In modern times, the first jhana is often misunderstood. Some take it lightly, thinking it is just a pleasant concentration. Others make it into a mystical achievement reserved for saints and hermits. But the truth is more humble and more profound. The first jhana is a human potential, real, repeatable, and accessible. It is not given by grace or genius. It is born from ethical living, steady attention, and the willingness to stop chasing. When one enters the first jhana, even for a few moments, one understands something wordless. The mind does not need to be restless. Pleasure does not need to come from the world. In silence, true silence is not empty. It is full. From this stillness, the path continues. The fire of rapture must soften into the quiet light of serenity. The initial applications must fall away, like scaffolding removed from a finished tower. The second jhana calls, deeper, quieter, closer to the heart of the mystery. The transition from the first to the second jhana is not marked by effort, but by release. As the meditator rests in the first jhana, a subtle understanding begins to bloom. The applied and sustained thought, vitakka and vikara, while useful, now feel like gentle disturbances on a quiet lake. They were necessary to stabilize the mind, but now they flicker like candle smoke in a windless room. The meditator recognizes that they are no longer needed, so they are gently let go. And with that letting go, no more steering. The object of meditation is no longer held. It simply is, like the moon held effortlessly in a clear night sky. The meditator no longer feels like they are doing anything. In fact, the sense of doing dissolves almost entirely. All that remains is the experience, deep joy, unshakable stability, and radiant presence. The Pali canon describes the second jhana as, with the stilling of applied and sustained thought, a monk enters and dwells in the second jhana, which has internal confidence and unification of mind, is free from applied and sustained thought, and has rapture and pleasure born of concentration. This is a profound shift. The joy, piti, and the pleasure, sukha, are still present, but now they arise not from the effort of seclusion, but from the power of inner unification. The mind is truly gathered, like light focused through a lens into a single, steady flame. And in this unified state, there is a deep inner confidence, called ajata sampasdana, a sense that this piece is stable, that it will not break with the next breath. The joy of the second jhana is smoother than that of the first. It is not the thrilling excitement of breaking free from restlessness, but a more refined, inward bliss, a joy that feels like warm sunlight radiating from within. The body, though still faintly perceived, seems weightless, as if it is being held by the breath itself. Time fades. The world disappears. There is only presence, vivid and complete. This is the stage where many first encounter what feels like true inner silence, not the silence of a quiet room. Having once been a noisy marketplace, has now become a sanctuary. And yet, this silence is not empty. It is alive. The joy felt in the second jhana is so rich, so pure, that it can feel like a secret known only to the heart. Some ancient texts describe it as divine pleasure, not because it comes from gods, but because it transcends the sensory plane. In this state, the meditator tastes what it means to be free from craving, if only temporarily. There is nothing missing. Nothing is needed. It is enough to simply be. Still, the Buddha warned against attachment, or becomes enamored with its sweetness. The deeper journey stalls. The jhana becomes a refuge, but not yet a liberation. In the ability to remain with an experience not out of force, but out of ease. There is nothing to do. Just to dwell, steadily, silently, deeply. Modern practitioners sometimes ask. Those who taste the second jhana often report a distinct change. Thought subsides completely. The mind becomes effortlessly one-pointed. The joy is deeper, steadier, and not connected to any particular external cause. There is a certainty to the stillness, a sense of falling into alignment with something timeless. The second jhana is also the beginning of true samadhi, concentration not as a means, but as a state in itself. It is here that the meditator begins to understand how the mind, when unified and pure, becomes a tool of insight. It is like tuning an instrument until it produces a perfect note. And from that note, the music of wisdom will one day arise. And yet, even this joy, this beautiful silence, is not the end. The Buddha encouraged his disciples to go further. For even joy, however pure, has a subtle vibration, a wave that disturbs the stillness just slightly. The mind, trained now in subtlety, begins to notice this. It begins to yearn not for more joy, but for deeper peace. A peace beyond pleasure, a stillness beyond delight. This yearning is not craving, but wisdom. It is the natural progression of a mind that sees clearly. The flame of joy, once bright, begins to calm. The next jhana approaches, quieter, deeper, and more equanimous. Thus the meditator prepares to step beyond joy into serenity itself. As the meditator abides in the second jhana, wrapped in a joy that feels vast yet tranquil, another subtle transformation begins to take place, not through striving, but through a natural maturation of insight. The meditator begins to observe that even joy, even the most sublime rapture, carries within it a subtle wave. There is movement, a kind of bubbling, a radiance that, though beautiful, still disturbs the stillness. And as the mind becomes more refined, it is like watching the sun slowly dip below the horizon. The light softens, the air cools, and everything becomes still. The energetic thrill of pity, joy, gently fades, and in its place arises a serenity that is profound, unmoved, and inwardly luminous. This serenity is not dullness. It is alive, but calm, like a still forest pool that reflects the sky without a single ripple. The Pali Canon describes the third jhana in precise, elegant terms. With the fading away of rapture, remaining imperturbable, mindful, and clearly aware, one enters and dwells in the third jhana, and of this the noble ones say, he has a pleasant abiding, who has equanimity and is mindful. Here, pity, rapture, falls away, leaving only sukha, a deep, contented pleasure, and the emergence of upekkha, equanimity. The meditator is no longer uplifted by joy. They are balanced. The mind no longer leans toward anything, no longer prefers or rejects. It simply rests in the middle, fully aware, fully content, fully still. This upekkha is often misunderstood in modern contexts as indifference. But the equanimity of the third jhana is not cold or detached. It is warm, poised, and alive with presence. It is the kind of peace that comes not from avoiding life, but from seeing through its fluctuations. Pleasure and pain may still arise at the periphery of experience, not because it is effortfully focused, but because it is unclouded. It knows what is arising. It knows what is passing, and it knows that it does not need to interfere. In this stage, the sense of bodily existence becomes even more distant. The meditator may feel the body faintly, as if it is made of light, or as if it were simply not important. There is just this deep abiding in quiet well-being. And yet, as always, the Buddha reminds us, this too is not the end. The third jhana is peaceful, yes. It is even blissful in its calm. But there is still sukha, pleasure, subtle, refined, radiant, but pleasure nonetheless. And where there is pleasure, however refined, there remains a trace of leaning, a thread of preference, a desire, however faint, to remain in this peaceful state. But the mind that seeks full liberation cannot rest here. Not effort, that, too, is gone. It lets go of sukha, of pleasure itself, not because it is bad, but because it is no longer needed. The mind yearns not for delight, not even for peace, but for complete equanimity, for total stillness. In doing so, the meditator approaches the threshold of the fourth jhana, the most refined of the form absorptions. But to cross into that domain, they must be willing to surrender even the comfort of peace. And here lies the paradox. Only by letting go of all that is pleasant does one find the unshakable. Only by renouncing all that is sweet does one taste the absolute. The third jhana teaches that peace is deeper than joy, and that the deepest peace asks for the courage to let joy go. To the world, this might seem like loss, but to the awakened heart, it is freedom. It is not detachment from life, but liberation from clinging. It is the silence that no longer seeks to be filled. The meditator now stands at the edge of an extraordinary stillness, ready to leave behind not only noise and thought, not only pleasure and pain, but even the comfort of subtle contentment. The fourth jhana awaits, silent, pure, imperturbable. There is a silence that goes beyond all silence, a stillness so complete it cannot be described in words. And emotional vibration fades. What remains is something astonishing in its clarity, pure equanimity. The meditator enters this stage not by striving, but by letting go fully, utterly. And peaceful, but but it too is an experience that carries a whisper of preference. The mind, trained now to detect the subtlest flicker of attachment, sees it, knows it, and releases it. What remains is neither pleasure nor pain. It is neither this nor that. It is balance, complete, unwavering, and luminous. The fourth jhana is described in the Pali canon as, and is purified by equanimity and mindfulness. This is a mind that does not tremble, not in the face of joy, nor in the presence of sorrow. It is not aloof or numb. Rather, it is imperturbable, unshakable. The mind becomes like a perfectly still flame in a windless place. No part of it leans toward or away from anything. It is not reacting, not reaching, not avoiding. It simply is aware and undisturbed. In this jhana, the factors of upekkha and sati shine brightly. There is no doing, no manipulation of attention. The breath may have faded from conscious awareness entirely. The body, long since quieted, feels distant, sometimes even invisible. Time itself dissolves. There is only presence, vast, still, and silent. Some meditators describe this state as being outside of the world. It is not a place, but it carries a flavor of something other, not in the sense of escape, but of transcendence. The everyday categories of experience, sight, sound, thought, feeling, have no hold here. The sense of identity, of I am, becomes faint or disappears altogether. What remains is presence without self, awareness without commentary. In this extraordinary balance, the meditator finds a taste of the unconditioned, not yet nibbana. It is like standing on the stillest ground, from which one can look directly into the nature of reality without distortion. The Buddha himself praised the fourth jhana often, not merely as a deep meditative state, but as the launch point for the highest realizations. In fact, it is from this platform that the mind can begin to penetrate the three marks of existence: impermanence, suffering, and non-self. Without the stillness and clarity of the fourth jhana, the deeper insights risk being clouded by the noise of thought or the pull of emotion. This jhana also becomes the gateway to the arupa jhanas, the formless attainments, in which even the perception of form, space, and location dissolve. But that is another journey. Still, for the serious practitioner, the fourth jhana is not an end in itself. The Buddha was clear: jhana is a tool, a foundation, a means, not the final goal. To rest here forever would be to mistake serenity for freedom. Even the most radiant equanimity is still a conditioned state. It arises and passes, like all things. The practitioner who understands this does not cling to the stillness. They dwell in it with joy, yes, but also with wisdom. They use it as the still mirror in which reality is revealed. From this place, the investigation begins. What is this mind? What is this self? Where do thoughts come from? What is the nature of feeling, perception, consciousness? Here, the stillness becomes a lamp, not just a refuge, but a light by which the truth is seen. The fourth jhana teaches the final and hardest lesson of concentration. Even peace must be let go. Even stillness is not the ultimate freedom. There is something deeper, a liberation that is not bound by any state, not even the most sublime. And so, the meditator, grounded in unshakable serenity, turns toward wisdom. The inner eye opens. Insight begins. The jhanas are complete. The groundwork has been laid. The next chapter is the path of awakening itself. The stillness of the fourth jhana is complete, luminous, effortless, and free from disturbance. But as profound as this serenity is, it is not the final destination on the path of liberation. The Buddha was unwavering in his message. Calm alone does not free the heart. Even the most sublime absorption, if clung to, becomes a golden prison. What is needed now is vipassana, insight. And for that, the mind must turn its gaze inward, not to escape reality, but to penetrate it. Emerging from the depths of jhana, the meditator's mind is like a finely sharpened blade. Every flicker of thought, every shift in sensation, every formation of intention is seen with vivid clarity. There is no fog, no confusion. The stillness cultivated through concentration becomes the platform from which insight arises, not as a theory, but as a direct seeing. It is here that the Dhamma begins to reveal its deepest truth. The first truth seen is anicca, impermanence. With the silence of the jhanas fresh in the mind, the meditator now turns attention to the unfolding of phenomena. One by one, sensations arise: heat, pressure, flickers of sound, Memories, emotions, and all of them pass. Nothing stays. Nothing endures. Even the subtlest experiences are seen as dancing lights on a flickering screen. There is no solidity. There is no anchor. The meditator does not think this. They see it. Moment by moment. Birth and death of experience, again and again. From this clarity, a second truth emerges. Dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. Not because life is all pain, but because nothing in this constantly shifting reality can provide lasting satisfaction. Even joy, even beauty. Even the most refined pleasures of the jhanas, all of them are unstable, conditioned, fleeting. To cling to any of it is to suffer. And the meditator sees, we do cling. Subtly, unconsciously. We reach. We resist change. We seek to hold what cannot be held. And so we suffer, not because life is cruel, but because we misunderstand its nature. Then, from this recognition, comes the most radical insight of all, anatta, not self. Watching experience unfold without interruption, the meditator begins to see that there is no core behind it all. Thoughts arise, but no thinker is found. Feelings pass, but no feeler is grasped. There is doing, but no doer. Everything we have taken to be I, body, mind, personality. History is just a stream of changing conditions. There is no unchanging self within, no hidden soul, no eternal witness, just phenomena arising and passing away. At first, this may seem terrifying. The ground of identity begins to dissolve. But as the insight deepens, fear gives way to wonder, and then to liberation. For if there is no self, there is no one to cling, no one to suffer, no one to be born or to die. What remains is just the unfolding of nature, the dance of causes and effects, empty of ownership, but full of awareness. And that awareness, luminous, present, boundless, is not a self either. It is not an I am. It is just knowing, free of attachment, free of limits. The meditator, seeing this, begins to let go, not just of things, but of the idea that there is anyone to let go. Craving weakens. Fear fades. Even the subtle desire to become awakened is seen as just another conditioned arising. Then, in a moment that cannot be timed or forced, something shifts. The mind that has seen the truth does not go back. A veil lifts. A fetter breaks. This is called the opening of the Dhamma eye, the first glimpse of Nibbana. The texts say, whatever is subject to origination is subject to cessation. And the meditator sees it not as philosophy, but as a living reality. The wheel of becoming, the endless turning of birth and death, of clinging and loss, has been seen for what it is. And now the mind, no longer deceived, begins to step off that wheel. This first breakthrough is called Sotapaddi, stream entry. The meditator has entered the stream that leads inevitably to full awakening. From this point forward, what allowed this to happen? Not mere belief, not ritual, not scholarly knowledge. It was the union of two great powers, samatha and vipassana, calm and insight. Jhāna stilled the waters. It is the training ground for seeing it clearly. The absorptions are not ends in themselves, but doors into the mystery and beyond it. And now, the meditator stands at the threshold of freedom, not because they have found something new, but because they have stopped mistaking the unreal for the real. The self has been seen as empty. The world has been seen as impermanent. And in that seeing, suffering begins to fall away. The path is not over. There are more layers to shed, but the great illusion has been broken. The clarity of insight, they are more than enough to open the way to liberation. But for those with minds exceptionally trained in subtlety, and for those who seek to understand the full range of human consciousness, there are further states still, the arupa jhanas, the formless attainments. These are realms where even the perception of form is left behind, and the meditator journeys into dimensions so refined, so abstract, that the ordinary world fades entirely. The formless realms are not places. They are not visions. They are not imaginations. They are states of pure awareness, born from the fourth jhana but progressively abandoning even the most subtle mental reference points. In the form jhanas, there is still a sense of being somewhere, even if it's an internal stillness. But in the formless, that somewhere vanishes. What unfolds is like a sky without edge, a knowing without content. Not to objects, not to body, not to breath, but to the sense that awareness exists within a vast, limitless openness. The boundary of the body disappears, but something intuitively known. The meditator does not think. I am in infinite space. Rather, the mind becomes the knowing of space, vast and ungraspable. There is no object to focus on. There is no center. Attention floats, still, clear, boundless. And with no form, no sound, no motion, the mind becomes astonishingly quiet. But even this vastness has a subtle quality of being known. And so, as the meditator refines their perception even further, they begin to see that space is still a perception, something constructed, something held. And so they release it and turn attention to that which knows the space. This leads to the second formless attainment, Vyasayatana, the base of infinite consciousness. Here, space falls away, and the field of awareness becomes the object itself. There is no longer space being known, but simply knowing itself. Consciousness becomes like a vast mirror, aware of its own presence. There is no self-reflection in the ordinary sense, no thought, I am conscious. Rather, consciousness is experienced as limitless, continuous, and unbounded by form. The meditator abides here not by holding an idea of consciousness, but by resting in the subtle flavor of knowing without object. It is a self-sustaining field, nothing entering, nothing leaving. Just this, pure, infinite awareness. And yet, even this is not final. The mind, now trained to see the fabrication of even the most sublime states, begins to recognize that consciousness too is a perception, a mental representation. There is still subtle duality, knowing and known. And so, with exquisite subtlety, the meditator lets go once more. This leads to the third formless jhana, Akinkanyatana, the base of nothingness. Here, even consciousness seems to vanish. Even awareness itself have been relinquished. The mind rests in this nothingness as its object. There is peace here, but it is the peace of total absence, not even spaciousness remains. Just a subtle, formless knowing that there is nothing to hold. For most, this would seem like the end. But the mind can refine even further. Seeing that nothingness too is still a perception, still a construct, still a subtle formation, the meditator lets go one last time. What remains is not a perception of something, nor of nothing, but a state where perception itself flickers at the edge of cessation. This final formless attainment is Nivasana, the base of neither perception nor non-perception. Here, the mind is so refined, so still, that perception cannot be clearly said to be present, and yet it cannot be said to be absent either. There is no coarse knowing. There is no content. There is no thought. But some trace of experience continues, too subtle to be grasped, too faint to be described. It is like being on the edge of awareness, balance between being and non-being. This is the most subtle state possible within conditioned existence. So subtle, in fact, that the Buddha warned, if one were to die in this state, rebirth in a very refined but impermanent realm could follow, prolonging the cycle, not ending it. Why? Because the formless states, beautiful though they are still part of sasra. They are conditioned, temporary, subject to arising and passing. And so the enlightened meditator does not cling even to these. They enter these realms not for attainment or escape, but for understanding. They see, even infinite space, even infinite consciousness, even nothingness and beyond perception. All of it is anicca, impermanent. All of it is dukkha, unsatisfactory. All of it is anatta, not self. And so, they let go. This letting go, this release of even the most sublime attainments, is the gateway to the unconditioned. To nibbana, not a place, not a state, but the cessation of all fabrication, the end of craving, the freedom beyond birth and death. The formless realms are astonishing. They show the mind how deeply it can let go, how wide and subtle its field of experience truly is. But they are not the goal. They are glimpses into the vast architecture of consciousness, but they are still within the constructed world. True freedom lies beyond even these. And the one who sees this clearly and releases even the most sublime stands at the edge of the great mystery, ready to dissolve into peace itself. The formless attainments had taken the meditator to the farthest edge of perception, where even consciousness itself flickered like a candle at the end of its wick. But still, there was something. But its complete cessation. Not a higher state of consciousness, but the end of consciousness itself. This is Nirodha Samapatti, the attainment of cessation. To most, the very idea is inconceivable. What does it mean to experience the cessation of experience? What can be known if knowing itself disappears? How can a human mind continue if even perception and feeling fall away? And yet, this is precisely what the Buddha taught, that there is a state beyond all thought, all sensation, all knowing, where everything that can be said to arise and cease simply stops, not temporarily paused, but brought to a complete, absolute stillness. No breath, no sound, no form, no space, no awareness of awareness, nothing. The meditator does not reach this through willpower, but through purity, a mind so trained and calm, so clear in insight, so utterly free from craving that it naturally inclines toward complete silence. To enter Nirodha Samapatti, one must have fully mastered the 8 jhanas, both form and formless, and simultaneously penetrated the nature of phenomena through deep insight. It is not a state for beginners, or even advanced practitioners. It is the culmination of a mind that has truly let go of everything. What happens in Nirodha Samapatti? From the outside, the body remains seated, unmoving, perfectly still, often with no detectable breath, pulse, or sign of consciousness. And yet, this is not sleep. It is not unconsciousness in the medical sense. It is not death. The body continues, sustained by the momentum of prior intention. But the mind, the knowing, is entirely at rest, not in trance, not in dream, but entirely ceased. The suttas describe it as follows. For one who has attained the cessation of perception and feeling, all formations have stilled, all volitional activities have subsided, all feeling has ceased, all perception has ended. The mind is not just calm, it is luminous. Not just empty, it is free. The fetters that bind the heart to becoming have weakened or snapped altogether. The roots of ignorance have been cut at the base. Why is Nirodha so powerful? Because it reveals, not through concept but through direct absence, the greatest truth of all. Understands viscerally that there is nothing in this world, no self, no mind, no blissful state, that is truly permanent, truly satisfying, truly me. It is the supreme medicine for the final illusion, the belief that consciousness is eternal, that awareness is the ultimate refuge. Nirodha shows, even this must be let go, and in this letting go, the mind awakens to nibbana, not as a state, not as a place, but as the unshakable realization that the cycle is broken. The fire has gone out. The craving has ended. The builder of the house has been seen, and the house, the false construction of self and world, collapses. Not by form or formlessness, not by being or non-being. They remain in the world, appearing to others as a person, a teacher, a sage, but inside, there is no one. Just clarity. Just peace. One might ask, if everything ceases, if even perception and feeling end, what remains? The Buddha's answer was silence. Not because there was no answer, but because any answer would reintroduce the dualities he had transcended. Nibbana is not something to be grasped by logic or word. And for those rare ones, it is the final door. The door through which everything ends, and true freedom begins. The path has been walked to its very end. The mind has been trained in concentration, refined through the Jhānas. It has seen the rising and passing of all conditioned things through deep insight. It has let go of craving, clinging, becoming. And in the profound stillness of Nirodha Samapatti, even perception and feeling have ceased. The illusion of self, the chain of becoming broken. So what now? Does one disappear? Float into some cosmic light? Remain absorbed in transcendence, aloof from the world? No. The liberated one returns. They walk, they speak, they live, but not as before. Something fundamental has changed, not outwardly, but in the very heart of experience. The arahant, the fully awakened one, has no more becoming, no more seeds of rebirth, no more fear, no more resistance to what is. The return is quiet. There are no fireworks, no cosmic announcement. The world remains as it was. People chase, cling, weep, laugh, strive. But for the awakened, pain still arises, the body still ages, sickness may come, heat may burn, cold may sting. But suffering, in the psychological sense, has ended. The arahant does not resist what arises, nor do they cling to what fades. There is peace, but it is not numbness. It is not apathy. It is clarity so complete that nothing obscures the truth anymore. In the suttas, the Buddha described this as samaye with makrane, true knowledge. The awakened one knows. Whatever arises is conditioned. Whatever is conditioned is impermanent. Whatever is impermanent is not self. Therefore, nothing is worth clinging to. This knowledge is not dry philosophy, it is lived, breathed, seen in each moment. The arahant watches the world move and change. Like clouds drifting through the sky, they act, sometimes teaching, sometimes silent, sometimes walking through villages or sitting under trees. But there is no sense of I am doing. There is just the unfolding of action, free of ego, free of attachment. One of the most mysterious qualities of the return is naturalness. The arahant is not supernatural. They do not glow or float. They do not live in trance or exhibit magical powers. Instead, they are profoundly human, perhaps more so than anyone else. For the first time, they live without the tension of becoming. They eat when hungry, sleep when tired, speak when needed, all without inner struggle. Life continues, but now it is unburdened. Their mind does not grasp at experience. It does not identify. It does not fabricate unnecessary complexity. It rests in tathata suchness. Things are what they are. Joy arises, passes. Sadness arises, passes. Praise, blame, gain, loss, all are like echoes in an empty valley. Heard, but not clung to. Felt, but not owned. To the ordinary person, the arahant may seem distant, hard to understand. How can someone live without ambition, without regret, without identity? But to those who are sensitive, the arahant radiates a different presence. A peace not dependent on conditions. A joy that does not seek excitement. A wisdom that is not learned from books, but born of deep seeing. What about love? Does the arahant love? Yes, but not in the way of attachment, desire, or possession. Their love is boundless, without conditions. It is metta, loving kindness that asks for nothing. It is karu, compassion that responds to suffering without being trapped by it. It is mudita, joy in the happiness of others, free from jealousy. And it is upekkha, equanimity that sees all beings with clarity and balance. The arahant may choose to teach, like the Buddha, or may live quietly. They may stay in forests or in cities. But nothing binds them. Wherever they are free. They have no need to impress, to convince, or to prove anything. Their very presence becomes a teaching. This return to the world is sometimes called the lotus above the water. Just as the lotus grows from the mud, rises through water, and blossoms untouched on the surface, so too does the awakened one live in the world, but not of it. Even death holds no fear. For the arahant, death is simply the final letting go, the fading of the body-mind process. There is no clinging, no what comes next, no rebirth. Not because they enter heaven or some eternal place, but because there is no more becoming. The fuel has been burned. This may seem mysterious, perhaps even undesirable. But to the one who has seen the truth, it is peace beyond measure. The return is the proof. The awakened live among us, not always in robes or temples, not always famous. Some are unknown, gentle presences, but their eyes are clear. Their hearts are silent. Their lives are simple. They carry no burden. They have nothing to gain. And in their presence, others glimpse the possibility of something beyond suffering. They do not say, follow me. They say, look deeply. See for yourself. Because what they have realized is not something given, it is discovered. And that discovery is open to all. In an age obsessed with outer technology, satellites circling the Earth, artificial intelligence mimicking thought, instant access to oceans of information, we often forget the most ancient and profound technology of all, the technology of the mind. The Jhānas, preserved for over 2 millennia in the Pali canon, are not relics of a bygone mystical era. They are precise, methodical. Their relevance today is greater than ever. Why? Because the human problem has not changed. Despite our advanced tools, our species still wrestles with the same core afflictions: anxiety, restlessness, dissatisfaction, confusion, fear. We build faster machines, but not wiser minds. We create distractions by the millions, but still cannot sit still. We consume endlessly, but remain unsatisfied. The root problem remains a mind that does not know how to be free. The Jhānas offer an answer, not as beliefs, but as direct experience. In a world addicted to stimulation, the meditator learns what it means to truly arrive, not through a screen or substance, but through the quiet power of presence. In the second and third jhanas, the mind learns release. The meditator learns what it means to rest, not in sleep or numbness, but in stillness alive with clarity. By the fourth jhana, the practitioner experiences a taste of equanimity so deep that it becomes a refuge. The storms of the world still rage: politics, climate, relationships, mortality, but inside, a lake remains undisturbed. The heart is no longer reactive. It sees without clinging. It knows without needing to control. And the formless attainments? They are not escapist fantasies. They are explorations into the nature of awareness itself, revealing that space, consciousness, and perception are not solid. They show that what we take to be self is just a flickering process. They deconstruct it. They show the practitioner, layer by layer, how the mind fabricates reality and how suffering arises from identification with that fabrication. They're not about becoming superhuman. They're about becoming truly human, unburdened, clear, free. Today's seekers, overwhelmed by information, noise, and restlessness, are beginning to rediscover this ancient technology. Meditation is no longer a fringe practice. It is studied in neuroscience labs, prescribed in clinics, practiced in boardrooms. But much of what is offered under the name mindfulness is just the beginning. The jhanas go far deeper. They are the inner cathedral, vast, silent, sacred. Just ethical living, consistent practice, and a willingness to turn inward. The Buddha offered this path not as religion, but as an experiment. Come and see, he said. At Apasiko. What is perhaps most astonishing is that this technology has remained intact. Oral for centuries, preserved with astonishing precision in Pali, it has survived wars, migrations, translations. From suffering to freedom. In the end, the relevance of the jhanas is not found in books or doctrines, but in the heart that dares to look within, in the mind that learns to stand still, in the silence that reveals what words never can, and in the one who sits, eyes closed, breath quiet, heart steady, discovering, moment by moment, that the way out is not out there. It is here, inside, and always has been.